Hey everyone, my name is Jennifer Berkowitz, and I was just interviewed by Matt Rosenthal from Digging In, and we just had an amazing conversation together. I shared a little bit about my backstory and how gratitude and the power of focus has really changed my life and gave me the ability to be where I am today, which is financially retired and very happy. And I hope you enjoyed the show.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me again. I have an unbelievable guest on the show, as always. I have Jen Walzer Berkowitz today. And what is really amazing about her is that she knew as a child, as a teenager, that she was going to be an entrepreneur. And she'll tell you a little funny story about that in a second. But she's self-made, and her story is unbelievable. Just a successful woman who's inspiring, who is motivating. And so, Jen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. You're so sweet. Appreciate it.
Our show's over. So, your story really is cool. And so we know today you're at I might say this incorrectly, but you're an executive coach, or you coach CEOs, right?
I'm a strategy growth coach for
strategy. I wasn't get it wrong.
It's all good.
So that's who you are today, and you're successful. And anybody that meets you now just looks at this person who is successful today and it's like, well, awesome. It must have always been that way, but it wasn't always that way. You have a story to tell, and there was a path and a journey you took. So take me back to that earlier point time in your life when you were a kid. You knew you wanted to be in business. Like, where was that? What was that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember actually exactly where I was. I was sitting in the playroom floor. I think I was 8 years old at the time, and okay, I was kind of a dork. I'm going to just be straight out with you. I thought I was going to be the smartest person in the world. And I started reading the encyclopedia, trying to memorize it. Clearly, I didn't get too far because I realized really quickly it was going to be too difficult. However, I remember, I don't even know where I came into the word of entrepreneurship. And I remember I just loved, my dad still has a small business, and I just always loved the idea of business. I was always trying to sell things when I was a little kid. And then, I remember when I was looking through the encyclopedia, I saw entrepreneurship, and I remember saying, that's who I'm going to be. And I remember, and my parents remember it very well. I was so clear with who I was. When I was a kid, I tried to, like I said, I was always like starting little businesses. I was always I ran for, well, it's funny, I ran for class president in, I think it was the 8th grade, and I think I got like 4 votes. I was the biggest dork. I'll even admit it, like I had like glasses, headgear in school. I was a total dork.
Wait, you wore the headgear to school?
Oh yeah, I had to wear it all the time. It was awful. And then thankfully I got out of that phase, and by high school I looked very normal, and eventually I was senior class president, homecoming queen, like varsity cheerleader. Like I went through like a 180 of.
You evolved. You grew into your own.
It was just, but I always knew, like I always I was just very entrepreneurial in college. When I went to college, I had a license plate. My first car, I had a license plate, and I put on the license plate CEO to be. So it was CEO, the number 2, BE. When I graduated college, I put CEO to be on my graduation cap. When I was in college, so I studied computer science, management, information systems in college. I convinced the professor everyone got stuck on MIS 101. To me, it was like a no-brainer class, but a lot of people struggled with it. I was in a sorority and they all struggled with it. So I said, look, I'll tutor everyone. So my professor let me come into this big class of like 500 people. I'm like, guys, I'm going to be, I have a tutoring course if anyone's interested. And I used to get like 30, 40 kids at a time. And I would like tutor them. And I don't remember how much I charged, but it was great. It was my first kind of foray, whatever you want to call it, into entrepreneurship. And then I graduated.
When you were a kid and you saw your parents, I guess you said your dad was in business. What business was he in?
So he developed software, very specific accounting software. The interesting thing is my dad's a rocket scientist by trade. He has his thermodynamic master's degree, thermodynamic engineering. And okay. I thought he'd be an engineer at one point.
That's
too.
Common.
Yeah, I know. My dad's a rocket scientist, but then I don't remember when it was, but someone had asked him to develop software when he was, a young, graduate, and then kind of switched gears after a number of years designing rocket engines.
So okay, so he was in business, and so like you saw that that's like all you really knew. like growing up. So it was
Correct.
natural for you.
Yeah, and my dad was really great because he knew I was very good in math and science, and I loved math and science. And so he took me under his wing. He would try to teach me programming. You know, it was like the DOS basic programming language at the time. You know, when I was in college, I did it on the VAX VMS mainframes. But I just remember, like, even my dad had a business once where they were repairing computers and printers, and I remember one summer working in the back rooms, learning how to fix printers and, you know, configure computers. And so it was a really great experience. And my parents, best friends in the entire world, like they gave me such great values, just all about, you know, working hard work. And, you know, they were really good to me, but, you know, I had to work for everything. You know, I remember when I was 16 years old, they said, Jen, go get a job. Like, I remember when graduated from like summer vacation, they're like, you need to go get a job and don't go home until you have a job. Like, obviously I had to go home, but like, you know, go figure it out. And that was like their whole mental thing. And like, when I graduated college, you have to have a job before you graduate college. You're not allowed to come back and live at home. Like it was really great. I think a lot of the things that they taught me helped me to be who I am today.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have you on the show. I had a feeling that was true. I didn't know, and I'm glad you told that part of your story, because hard work, the work ethic, like doing the work, there's no shortcut to that. Like, and your parents taught you that. And, you know, we look at what goes on today around us. And I think a lot of the younger generation believes that you can shortcut things because whatever, you have the internet, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, and you see all these younger people putting this messaging out there with their rented Ferraris and whatever their visual is, but there is no shortcut to what you just said. There's
no,
not.
and I've been very lucky because the day I graduated college, and my first job was at Anderson Consulting. I was a programmer. I know I was taught, make sure you save at least 10% of your salary. Don't even look at it, just put it away. And so my entire career pre-entrepreneurship, I knew what it was like to actually live on my entire salary. So I would always be saving at least 10% and living underneath my means. And I've always been a saver. And then, you know, if there were like when I'd get bonuses, I would put majority of the bonus away and I would splurge on part of it. Cause look, you know, life is life. And especially, you know, when you're
right.
You know, whatever, single girl, like you want to go and, you know, buy some clothes or whatever. But I was very, very stringent with my money because I did know that one day I was going to start another business or a business. And so, yeah, I mean, I remember even like college graduation, my dad said, look, you know, I'll help you like get your stuff to DC, but you know, all the money I made in college, that's what gave me my little single bed and my little studio apartment. You know, I paid for it.
And that's a great feeling, right? Well, actually, I don't want to jump ahead. I want to go back one more second. So you said you knew you were an entrepreneur when you were young. What kind of like things, and I mean like when you were a kid, like what did you start? What did you try to do?
Oh, I was selling everything. Like, you know, like you have for school, like you have to sell the candy bars or whatever.
Right.
I don't know, but it was always in me that I had to be the best. Like I had to go that extra mile. So if I knew that, you know, Jane Doe, I don't remember, you know, was like selling, you know, 100, well, I had to get to 110. Like I just, and so I remember I would do so many things. Like I would just be going door to door in my neighborhood. I had a very I was very focused. I think that's probably the best way to describe myself. And probably the same way today is I was very focused of when I knew I wanted something. And that's probably something that my sisters and my family will tell you that, and Brad knows this is about me too. It's a good and bad thing, but like when I get focused on something, I get focused. Like I'm like, okay, game on, let's go. It's going to happen. And I don't know how. It's interesting, Matt, because I don't know how that came into me. And it's something I'm trying to instill in my two young boys. I don't know. I don't know if it's something, is it born in you? Is it something that you just, because very much like that too, like, you know, we're wrong or one, but I don't know. I don't know if it's something that it's in you or you created in you. I'm not sure.
It is. It's interesting. And so like, I know when I grew up, I didn't have much of anything. So somewhere I decided like I wanted things in life that I didn't have. And so I was just super driven, but there was also something in me that actually was the drive. Like I could have just been like, I don't want to do that. And maybe that is just born in you. It's a really interesting topic, but you still have to take action, and taking action is maybe it's not born in you. Like you, that's a choice. Like you made choices to take action.
Yeah. But I think I see that a lot in today's society too. It's either you either have to have that fire in your belly or you don't. Like I have so many people who I see who are like, woe is me, I'm a victim in life. And they, I see them like on Facebook, they're just like blah, 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 like why things are, not going for them. But then the next post I'll see a day later is like, oh, did you watch that Netflix, movie? And I'm like, okay, you're watching TV all day. No wonder you're not getting shit done. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Exactly. No, listen,
It
swear, the
bugs
more
me
the
to
better.
know. It bugs me to no end. And I feel like TV is a waste of time, but that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But I don't know. I don't know if it's sport in you, but I just know that, and my sisters and I are all the same way. My middle sister, my older sister, we're all very driven in our different worlds. Like my oldest sister was a nurse. My middle sister was in fashion. I'm in tech. Like we look like, especially my middle sister and I look like twins, but I don't know. We always say like, what did our parents do? Maybe you need to interview my parents, interview my dad.
That's the next one. They probably did do something, and it's like interesting to figure that out. But whatever they did, like there's things I've been writing down. I'm going to hold off until I read this list to you because there's some common traits that you've already talked about from yourself that everybody that I have on the show so far, everybody has the same things in common, which is why I love talking to self-made people. Because it's that's like this stew. There's a secret sauce to that, but it's not really a secret.
I think, you know what it is? I think it's a fear. Like one of my fears in life is a fear of failure. And so I'm so driven to be successful. And I'm fearful of even like, this sounds really corny, but I'm just sharing with you, is that fearful of not having some, right? So like when I go to the food store, I buy extra. Like Brad's like, why do we have 5 ketchups, right? Like, I don't know, like, but it's like this, it's safety. I don't know. And I get very driven towards it because I never in life, it was just, I don't want to ever be where I'm not. And it's funny because it's even ironic today. Like I'm very lucky. I have a great life. Like I have, I'm financially retired, but yet I'm still driven because it's like a mental thing. Like, even though like, I don't need
not about the money,
but it's like this mental thing. It's like, I want to continue. Well, yeah, it's for that. It's not, but there's still that 1% of me of like, well, what happens if like all my assets all of a sudden like go away somehow? I don't even know, like, because I don't touch it, but like what happened?
So let me share something with you because I wouldn't have gone that deep, but you went there. So I can tell you that I've done the research. I've done the work on myself, years of trying to figure things out. And underneath it all, one of the things that oftentimes, so it's your belief system, right? All these thoughts and actions. There's only a few key beliefs, and they're usually based in moving away from pain and towards pleasure. And that's everything we do. It's pleasure, pain, and so to your perception, which I relate to, a belief I should say, which I relate to is, for me, I grew up with nothing, so I never want to go back there. So I'm always worried about that. Even when I'm not thinking about it, it's underneath it. So when I have a client that calls up with a complaint, it makes me nuts, because like that in my mind, it goes right to, I'm going to lose the client and I'm going to lose it. And so it creates this whole thing. So I've worked through it and I don't have that reaction anymore, but I used to not know why I was like that. But it comes from like this fear of loss. It wasn't a fear of failure. It was a fear of loss. And underneath the fear of loss, and so yours might be somewhere in there, for me was the fear of not having what I need, because I didn't want to go back to where I came from. And so I know that's what it is. So you're just like, you have there's one layer beneath it. So where does your fear come from? Like, so what'll happen if that happens is the next question. Like, what's okay? Yeah. So, and if you answer that, you actually figure out like where it's really coming from. But it's an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, it's all conversation. You could be coaching me now.
So I have a question though. So as you were doing these different things as a kid, and this is so common with people who are self-made. You know, it's the typical, like, I had a lemonade stand, I was selling candy. Everybody's got all these stories, and you have similar stories. So you just knew. Do you remember what the feeling was that you got addicted to? That when you did those things, you're like, I know I'm going to do this, because there's a feeling there that you liked.
Yeah. No, I love success. But you know what I just love making an impact, whatever it may look like. So if I was doing the lemonade stand and everyone was like, oh, it's great lemonade, it made me feel great. I just love taking care of people. I know that. And my purpose in today's life, you know, that I just know what I'm so driven towards is I want to give others the same freedom I have today. And everything that I do is all about giving others freedom. Everything from, I do a ton of volunteer work so that people can have more freedom in whatever that may be for them. Like freedom, even like being on, the head of the tennis committee, right, in our community. It's like, to help the board, right, giving them more freedom to be able to do other stuff if we can, support them and take care of things that are going on, freedom, of helping my clients, tenfold, and so that they have the freedom that I do. Yeah, I don't know. I just really I love success. I love making an impact. That's really at the core of who I am. Right. My now 11-year-old, when he was 6, he had started an ice cream company here in the community, and it got out of control, huge. But I loved it because not only was he learning entrepreneurship, but we were making an impact. We were making people smile, that people were enjoying the ice cream, and whatnot. So, it's
I love it. Yeah, that's a really awesome why, almost what. I have something that I'm curious about. So when you were saying before about why you buy, by the way, I'm going to tell you something funny. I have no hair. It's very short. I have a little bit of hair. So I bought 5 of those tall, like 16-ounce things of shampoo. 5 of them. They came in an Amazon box. My wife was like, "What is this huge box at the front door? It's heavy." And I'm like, "It's shampoo. It's for me." She's like, "What?" I buy 5 of everything.
Yeah.
I get it. I do it because of the reason I said to you before, like, it's this mindset of like, I don't want to run out. Like, I know what that feels like to have nothing. I'm curious if this is maybe something that was going on with you the whole time. When I was doing the same thing you were doing when I was a kid, and I was selling things, I was making money. What I found was in every case I was helping somebody with something. So there's impact, there's satisfaction, there's all that. But what I really got addicted to was I have the power to make something happen and not have to rely on somebody else. And that was one of the powerful things. And I'm curious, like, I hear the impact, I hear the volunteering, I hear all of it, but I'm curious underneath what happened for you, because this defines everything else you're about to tell us. It all had an impact. You had an impact on so many people, but what did it really make? How did you feel when you were a kid that made you want to keep going through the pain of the failure of being an entrepreneur? Because it's failure, it's hard work, it's wins, it's losses, it's ups. It is not easy being an entrepreneur, but you did it because it was a feeling you liked.
Yeah, no, and it's, I don't know what's the specific feeling, but the one thing I definitely know of is I'm very confident in my abilities. That's the one thing I don't question in terms of, like, I know I'll never starve. I know if I had to start all my life all over again, I could go say, "Hey, who wants a CEO?" Whatever. I don't worry about that. But what I loved as a kid was, like, I guess part of it was a confirmation of who I was, right? That in a way, when you sell something, right, you're really not selling the product. Like my glasses right here. If I said to you, "Buy these glasses," you're not buying the glasses. You're like, I mean, yes, you're buying the glasses, but there's this trust factor. You're buying me. Like, it's the trust that, and I think deep down, it's
connection, the trust
I love, because I know that if you buy something from me, you trust me. And you trust that whatever I believe is going to be good for you and solve whatever anxiety point you have, that's going to make me feel good. So at the end of the day, it's this trust, this bond, that is what really, and it's funny because when people say no, it's also a personal thing too, right? Like, it's hard not to make things at the end of the day, like ice cream or whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think there's something there that it gives you that confidence. It gives you that trust. Like, hey, people trust me. People believe in me. Okay, let's go. Like, and how many more people can trust me? Let's keep growing it.
That's why I wanted to push you a little bit on this, because as we go forward now, anybody who ever listens to this and we hear the entrepreneurial story, it's important to connect with like what's really going on, because when you have those hard times as an entrepreneur, you can't forget why you're doing it. And you just shared a really deep why of why anybody who's going to put themselves through being an entrepreneur with that huge potential of building something, you're doing it because in your case, it's I am good enough. I am capable, and I know that I can do this. And I feel really good when I help people and they trust me. And that's what I bet you that defines everything you did in some way going forward. That's
Yeah. I mean, like right now I have a side passion thing that I'm doing with my sister. We're trying to educate people on this whole clean beauty movement because the last time the beauty industry updated their regulations was 1938. And, there is this whole and I'm trying to mentor a lot of people and helping them understand that it really is a trust level. Like if you're sharing clean beauty products, first and foremost, people have to like you, people have to trust you. And, it's, you have to be in alignment with why you're doing it. Because for me, I'm just so upset with the beauty industry that I need to educate people. So for me, and it's just a side thing that I'm doing with my sister, for me, it really drives everything that I'm so passionate about it and people trust me. And it's just, and likability factor that you have to just build with people.
passion and purpose. That's a
Yeah,
really common one. All right. So now we're gonna let you move forward. So now there's a great story here, but here's what I heard, which is going to define everything else you talk about. You're disciplined, your drive, you had disappointment, but you know how to deal with it. And you're probably going to tell us a few stories about some ups and downs. You actually know you have potential, and even though you could have reached it, you haven't stopped. You're actually continuing when you could stop to see what you're really capable of. And you're motivated, high energy, but that discipline and that commitment is what I heard when you said you put money away, and everything you're saying to me, it's all about that. Now tell me the rest of your story, because this is it. This is what it takes to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So, well, I started my first company when I was about 25. I was designing interactive voice response systems for labor unions. And what I learned so much, this was a huge learning experience for me. What I learned about this business was there a huge opportunity to do these whole IVR systems with telephony, because it was becoming really big. This is like in the early 90s or mid 90s, right? And there was this huge opportunity. The problem was I wasn't very passionate about the business. I was solving a fundamental problem that these customers were having, that, I was going after these labor unions that had, their members couldn't get access, during working hours. They couldn't call the office to get their annuities balances, pension balances, find out if they're eligible for healthcare. And so this whole concept, well, wait, it's already in your databases. Why not? Let's automate it. Let's connect it to the phone systems. And, I knew, because I was loving this whole telephony industry, I was doing a lot of research. So I thought, take a dialogic board, take, whatever, build a computer, let's set, build that. But I was not passionate about it. And so during the day, I was out there hitting the pavement, talking to labor, union presidents. And at nighttime, I was programming, but I was bored out of my mind. And so I learned after about a year and a half, I'm like, this is not who I am. This is not what I want to be doing. And I had a huge opportunity. I had a big insurance company that wanted me to build something for them, but I didn't like it. So I ended up selling it. I didn't make anything off of it. It was like one of those, okay, lesson learned, move on. Then I got the opportunity to be involved in some different .coms where I had the opportunity to place in different roles. So I learned a ton over the next few years, but I stayed in touch with those customers. And it was one of those customers that lost data that caused me to look at that industry to say, wait a second. It was right after 9/11. I'm living in New York City. So many people were losing their data. People left, it was just a disaster. And I said, wait a second. I've had my fair share of disasters with tapes. There's got to be something better out there. And my dad and I, by the way, we love talking over dinner, like technology and whatever. And my, and I remember we were talking about it. It was actually my dad. He's like, we were talking and he's like, there's this concept he's been looking at too, like this internet backing up over the internet. I'm like, wait, this is huge. This is huge. So long story short, I'm like, wait a second, I think I want to do this. And so I basically liquidated everything I owned. I piggybacked off of someone else's infrastructure at first because I didn't want to build my own infrastructure and waste money. But I basically started small. I tried to, get some people to leverage my service. But here is where
you sold everything you had?
Not sold everything, but all my savings, I had to,
you that was it. You went all in.
I went all in. I put
plan B.
I lived on oatmeal and PB&J for a few years. I did nothing. Okay. I was single. I didn't go out. I didn't the running joke with my girlfriends is the Match and the JDates and all those websites. That was the only time I went out for dinner. It was they used to call it freedinner.com for Jen, because that was the only time I went out for dinner. If my girlfriends were going out, I'd meet them for coffee afterwards because I wouldn't spend any money on food because I had to protect, to make sure that I was making.
Wow. You were laser beam focused.
I was laser.
That's heavy.
The reason why I felt like this opportunity was so big was because if you looked at the market, this is now late 2002, everyone had backup, right? Like everyone was using tapes, whatnot. But the issue was is that no one ever thought about backing up until it was too late. And no one does recovery drills. And I know you're in the IT business, so you're probably doing it for companies, but let's just talk about like how long ago it was. And even in big companies, they would give the junior IT guy the responsibility of swapping out the tapes, right? And no one ever thinks about it. And they're magnetic and they have so many issues with it. And this whole concept of why wouldn't you break down, your data into packets and send it over the internet in encrypted format? Like all this stuff, like my brain was just like, whew, like, wow, this is insane. And my whole concept was, well, wait a second. Everyone just, gives you the software facilities. Good luck. And we hope it works. I know everyone has this issue. I'm going to take a totally different approach. I'm going to give it a whole white glove service because again, it's this whole trust factor. So my whole business model was, look, not IBM, not anyone else. We are going, because it was just me and myself at the time, but to set up the software for you. I'm going to monitor your backups every day. I'm going to check your logs. I'm going to obsess over you so that if anything's not working right, I'm going to let you know right away. So I had this whole business model where we were going to obsess over you. We were a premium white glove service. And a lot of things happened over the years, but on average, we were about 10 times more expensive than all of our competitors. Give you an idea, when I first started the business, I charged $55 a compressed gigabyte.
But aside from the fact you had obsessive client service, you were in a market where there was very little competition. You controlled the pricing.
Yes and no, because the problem was that no one understood. No one had a clue what I was talking about. No one had heard of online data backup at the time. So I was going into a market that was absolutely brand new. You have to realize Google, all those companies, Carbonite, Mozy, that you probably heard of on the consumer level, they didn't show up until about 2007, 2008. This is 2002. This is way.
This was Iron Mountain. Tapes were going to Iron Mountain.
Everyone was using tapes, and no one felt. They're like, "What do you mean? I'm putting my data offsite to you?" Like, right. It was a lot of education, and there were times where I'm like, "What am I doing?" Like, I had a great job, making six figures before I started this company, and I remember after like 2 years, I'm like, "Oh my God, I think I've made 30,000 the entire year. Like, what am I doing to myself?" But I knew in my heart that data was growing. People were going to need to protect it more so than ever. Servers were, 100% guarantee a server is going to crash at some point. So, so I didn't give up. And at times I'll never forget it. At one time I remember sleeping underneath my desk. I had a lot of crazy hiccups, a lot of crazy things that I'm like, what, like almost like, okay, should I continue to do this? There was one point where I had one engineer, oh my God, he worked out of my apartment. It was so weird. I had my desk in my room. He had my kitchen table. I had like a network running with wires. He would sit there on my couch while I'm while he was like lunch break. I'm like, it was the weirdest thing, but I couldn't afford an office just yet. And then there was one time where we finally got an office. I subleased a space and I found out the guy had not paid his rent in 6 months. So then we got kicked out like the next month. It was all crazy. So
you did all this, you went through all this, but as you progressed, it started taking off.
Yeah. So I had a couple of really great things that happened. One, I remember Bank Hapoalim. I remember I was like running out of cash. Like I literally had no more money left. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to pay this one engineer I had? And then they're like, okay, we're moving forward. And then they had a check for like 75,000, I think is what it was. I'm like, I'll pick
oh my God.
By your office today. Like I was like, I'm coming down to Midtown right now. The CTO was like, okay. I'm like, no, I really need this now.
So that was a moment like where if that didn't happen, it might have been over.
Yeah, credit cards would have been racking up more. Yeah.
That's a cool point to look back on.
It was a cool point. I had some really interesting experiences. One time I'm on a flight. JetBlue had just launched a couple of years before, and I remember some guy sits next to me. He's wearing like a employee badge. You just wear jeans, a t-shirt, sneakers, whatever. And I just sat next to him. I'm like, I love your airline. I think you guys have the most phenomenal airline. And I just kept telling him how great his airline is. And he's like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, telling him what I do. And he was like, tell me more. Turned out he was like the CTO of JetBlue. He gave me the opportunity to come down to their headquarters at JFK Airport. They ended up being a client. So like I had some really crazy experiences that happened.
Wait, you ended up getting JetBlue as a client for online backup? That's crazy.
We backed up. I don't remember how many locations. We backed up some of their airports. Yeah.
That's a lesson right there. You never know who you're talking to.
You never know. You never know. And my all-time favorite was I was cold calling people, and I was never really officially in sales ever in my life, but
You're a salesperson.
you have to figure it out. I cold called, I had like a 3-person hedge fund office, and they loved, and they ended up going forward with me. And then they said, you should talk to our hedge fund hotel group.
Right.
Yes. And I'm like, sure. So I remember talking to this guy, Chris, I'll never forget it. He's like, what are you guys doing? What is this online backup? And I'm like, and I tell him what I'm doing. Like, I like this. He said, would you be able to offer maybe an exclusive discount to all the UBS hedge funds? And in return, we'll give you everyone. And I'm like,
sure.
Yeah. And then I remember all of a sudden, I think I had a few engineers at the time, and all of a sudden it was like, we were getting flooded. Like all of a sudden, like, well, okay, we have an office of 8, companies. We need you to back up starting today. And then tomorrow was like 5 more. We're like, oh my God, we were like running around like crazy. And then started building relationships with Goldman Sachs and everyone else. And then started realizing with this whole Dodd-Frank Act and all these things happening that I had to keep changing and being very specific in our brand. And that's when I learned, and this is really important in business, is that if you really want to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, you have to be very clear with your brand promises. And I guaranteed to all of our clients that if we couldn't recover your data, you would get your money back. And no one would do that. And not only that, I also was willing to write a letter to the SEC and FINRA stating how we were compliant, which again, Iron Mountain, no one was willing to do that. And because of the degree of what we were willing to do and the infrastructure that we built to support those brand promises, companies, we basically alleviated all of our clients' anxiety so that it became a no-brainer. Well, why wouldn't you use Boomi for backup and recovery and compliance for what they needed? And so that also catapulted our business even more. And we were able to be like 10 times more expensive than our competitors because of the positioning. We were very clear who we were going after. And the JetBlue and those companies were more in the beginning, but really where we focused on was the financial institutions is who we went after.
That is brilliant. It's like pivoting, being able to adapt. As people are listening to this, somebody might turn to you and say, well, the timing, it was like luck. I mean, listen to the story you're telling, but it's not. You were prepared. There were opportunities presented, and you were present. Like you were doing things, you were taking action, and that's not luck. It's fortunate that you met people, but you met them because you were out there talking about it. That's not luck.
No, absolutely. And when I coach teams now, so today I'm a strategy growth coach. I only work with a few handful of a few companies because I like my retirement, but I also like to keep my brain going. But one of the there's a lot of things that I do first with a team, making sure that we've got the right people in the right seats and that there's metrics and everything associated with it. But once we have kind of the infrastructure running and everything's running smoothly, I'm such a believer that everyone needs very clear brand promises. And by the way, it can take you 2 years to actually implement it. But when you're really clear of who you're going after and how you're going to relieve their anxiety by doing whatever that brand promise is, you can change the whole game in terms of your market, your competition, everyone. No,
100%.
When I say brand promise, not like, oh, we're going to be so good to you. Like that's junk. Like that's nothing. I'm saying like, we're going to get like, let's just say for your type of a business, like we're going to get it right the first time, or we're going to get it right, or you're not going to pay until it's right, or anything that's where their anxiety lies. If you can figure out where their number one pain point is and figure out how to solve it, then you can charge more too, because you basically alleviated anyone else out there, right? So there's a lot of things that I think businesses fail to do. And it's something that I, as a strategy growth coach, that I obsess over with my clients. And I'm very proud to say that my clients that I've been working with over the last, number of years, I mean, so many, they've all like crazy scaled up, like crazy, like and had crazy exits. But it's not rocket science, but you have to be diligent, like we talked about, and focus. And
well, for you, it kind of is rocket science. I mean,
I know, with my dad, I know.
Wait, I know we only have 10 minutes because you have a hard stop, but I want to get, so you built that business up and you exited, right? So the business was built, it was positioned, it was run well, and you had the opportunity to exit, so you did, right? So what was that time frame? How many years was that start to exit?
So I sold in July. It was July 30th, 2014. So it was about 12-ish years. I wasn't even looking to sell. Let me be very clear. I was actually on maternity leave for a few months, and my team, I wasn't really involved in the day-to-day anymore. I had a phenomenal team of just rock stars that were running the day-to-day. And I teased the company that bought that I wasn't looking to sell, but they just gave me an opportunity. An offer I couldn't refuse. So I ended up selling. And I believe the reason why we had, like, truthfully, I thought the company was worth X. They thought it was worth, way more than I thought it was worth. Right. And I think part of it is because of the way we were positioning ourselves, being very focused. We were New York City niched in the financial services world with those brand promises. Our price points were really high. I mean, we were debt-free, extremely profitable business. Everything was running so smoothly. I mean, I had like real-time metrics running at any given time of everything that was going on in the business. I mean, like we were like running like on steroids. And I think that, don't get me wrong. I mean, we still had our, scaling challenges like every other company did, but there was a book that I read years ago that changed my life. And it's the methodology I teach today, which is this book called Scaling Up by Matt. You know what? If you haven't read it, I'll give you a copy because I got some copies in my.
You cut out when you said that. It's called Scaling Up.
Oh, sorry. Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. I'm going to give you a copy. You're going to get one later today. It's great.
I love it. I love it.
It totally changed my life.
I'm so inspired. I'm going to hire you. I love it. You exited?
Love what I do. I'm sorry.
So you exited, and then, you basically did create and sort of live the dream, even though you worked your ass off to make it happen.
Yeah, and there was definitely sacrifices. I got married at 37, right? Granted, I'm love of my life. I'm married, but you make sacrifices to stay focused. But go on, sorry.
I want you to tell me, so did that transition from being in that high, fast pace, like you're building, and all of a sudden now you're like, okay, like, is there like a weird feeling after you transition like that?
Yeah. So you mean when I sold?
You sold and now you're home, like, and you can kind of do what you want.
Matt, it was awful. Let me be very clear. I think that as a entrepreneur, you need to have a plan B. I retired at 40. And I think what people realize or fail to realize is that there's two types of retirement. There's financial retirement and business retirement. So I like to say that, everyone says they want to be retired. You want to be financially retired. I don't think you want to be business retired because, I'm lucky, like I'm financially retired. But what happened for me was I all of a sudden sold the company. I wasn't even looking to exit. I was Jen Walzer in New York, and now I moved down to South Florida. I decided to just keep my married, use my married name at this point. I'm Jen Berkowitz. People are meeting me. They don't know anything about me. They Google Jen Berkowitz. There's nothing on me. And then I'm in mommy and me classes and, with my little ones. And it was the weirdest experience. I had no identity. I had no one knew me down here. It was a very horrible, I just lost who I was. And that's part of the reason why I was like, okay, I got to do something with my life. I was doing a ton of volunteer work, volunteer coaching. And it was my colleagues who were like, Jen, you're so good. Look what you're doing. I was doing a lot of pro bono, like minority coaching, helping people hitting their first $1 million in revenue. I'm like, you're so good at it. Why don't you help on a bigger scale, get these companies, to the next level? And so that's what I do today. But I'll tell you, you really need to have a plan B. And not only did I get depressed, but I ended up getting really sick because my immune system just took a nosedive, and I didn't realize I was dealing with health issues, which I know we're not going to talk about today, but it turned out it was Lyme disease that just destroyed my body. And so there was a few years, actually, I was actually bedridden, blind and bedridden in bed where I couldn't do anything.
This was after 2014?
Yeah.
After you had kids?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. No kidding.
Yeah. If you knew me back in between, I used to have a PICC line in my arm, like for a year. It's like a thing that goes to your heart. I was literally with a pole every day, taking for a few hours of medicine in a day. There was a period of time where I couldn't even see what my kids looked like. It was
what happens? Like
I think that your immune system says, okay, I'm finally done with the craziness. And Lyme was kind of hiding in my body. And I was dealing with weird health issues anyways that no one could figure out over the years. And everyone used to say, Jen, it's stress, it's because you're running such a fast growing business. That's why, I was walked out of so many doctor's offices because you're stressed out. That's why you're sick. But it turned out it wasn't mental. It was literally Lyme taking over my body. And I was misdiagnosed for like 15 years. And then, oh yeah,
I had Lyme disease for 15 years and nobody ever tested you for it.
they think I got it as a kid at summer camp, and it never manifested itself until I was 29.
Wait, you got to slow down for a sec because this is important. We're talking about people that are entrepreneurs, people that are, even if they're just, you're working for somebody else in the business, you got to stop and you got to like take care of your health, because nothing else really is that's the most important thing.
I cannot stress
And trust your gut. If you don't feel like something's being figured out, you own it, right? It's like the doctors will tell you whatever they think it is, but they could be wrong. And in your case, they were wrong.
So wrong. I used to write a weekly column in the New York Times while I was CEO of my company that it was called The CEO's Journey. And I remember one article I did write all about your health is everything. A friend that passed away, and he kept saying, "Oh, I don't have time to go to the doctor." Well, guess what? Like, if you don't have your health, you have literally nothing. And it's funny because when I sold the company, I was like, okay, now I can figure out what's going on. But at the time, my body just took a downfall. And I say now when I play tennis now almost every day. And when I play in my matches, I say to my team before each match, I'm like, guys, be grateful. We have our health. We're in South Florida. We are in paradise. Like, win or lose, be grateful that we have the ability to play tennis. And actually talking about focus, once I was diagnosed and I was going through the process, and it took about 2 years, I had one goal. My goal was to learn how to play tennis, and I was going to be on a tennis team. And I told the old director, I said, I'm going to be on the tennis team. I have no idea how to play tennis, but I'm going to be on the tennis team and I'm going to be captain. And then 2 years later, in that September, guess who was captain of the tennis team?
The rocket scientist. Of course you were.
Rocket scientist. Yeah. So I have like a crazy backstory with tennis. Like, I get very like I get protective even with my clients. They know when my match days are. I'm like, we can never have a meeting on match day because that's my protective time.
Well, that's really important to you. We have 2 minutes left because you got to go. All right. So this brings us to, wow, that was interesting. I didn't know that about you. That's powerful. That's surprising that you had that experience. Okay. So you're doing the coaching you're doing now. Tell me about it. Tell everybody about it, and tell everybody then how they can find you, how they can reach you.
Sure. So I am a strategy growth coach. I work primarily with mid-market CEOs and their executive teams. Typically, my clients are anywhere from about 50 to 100 million, but I have taken clients. I have one client that's just doing about, I think, like 4 or 5 million right now. I really believe in this woman. She's a veteran. She's an incredible woman that I'm, excited to help her. So for me, it's not so much the size, it's more about the team and what they're trying to get done. Usually it's either they're growing too fast, they're having a lot of infrastructure challenges, or they're stagnant and they're trying to figure out, how to scale up. What I do is I basically facilitate their strategy meetings. I basically rip apart their business, help them put it back together, and get them a clear plan to moving, up the right direction. That's my favorite part, is ripping it apart. They're all like, what are you doing? But it works. Like, the methodology works. So, and then I usually will meet like one-on-one with the CEO, like on a weekly basis, just check in and be his confidant or her confidant to make sure that, everything, because in order for them to all scale up, they have to scale themselves up to scale the company up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love what I do. It's I'm very specific on who I work with because I do act like as an extension to them. I'm their biggest cheerleader. I'll be their biggest jerk if they're not getting their stuff done, that they say they're going to do. But it's a running joke, and it's a love fest. Like, I love my clients, and I'm very grateful to having them. And I'm very grateful in life. I'm very, every day I wake up breathing sunshine, clean air, and life is short. So I'm just very grateful and very grateful for everything. So
that's the last point I want to make, which is that attitude of gratitude.
Oh, huge.
Changes everything. And not only that, well, what I mean by that is it attracts good things to you. It attracts good people to you. And that whole energy is really what's underneath everything you're doing. And as you're talking about it, of course, the people that work with you are working with you because that's the energy you're putting out. And so it's this whole thing feeds off each other.
So, and the website's RJ Advisory Group. Yeah, you have to be grateful. Yep.
So you have your website, you have anything you want. Like, what you have in social media, what do you want to put out there?
Yeah, I have. If anyone's interested in being educated on the whole clean beauty industry, I have a fun side passion project. It's called Start the Spark in Facebook. So if you go onto Facebook, you can friend me. or go directly to my Facebook group. It's called Start the Spark. And the whole idea behind the group is that I want you to learn together with me, and hopefully it'll start that spark in you to make some healthy changes in your life so that we can all live a healthier life and healthier planet, because it's all about taking care of our planet too. I'm always happy to help people out. So if anyone has any questions, they need some guidance. I'm a big fan of reading the book Scaling Up. You can reach me on social media. You can reach me on, rnjadvisorygroup.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to put all that information down below. So anybody that's watching this, they can see it down below. And I want to say something. You came on here and you embodied the reason I do this show. You asked me before and I didn't answer you. We actually forgot to finish the conversation, but you asked me why I do this show. I get nothing from this any more than you do. We're doing it for the same reason, to motivate, inspire people, and just see if we can have an impact and reach people. That's why I do it. And that's why you're on here. And so that's what you did. So you didn't disappoint. And there's something I say at the end of every show, which is this: be humble, hustle, and do the work. Your story embodied that as well. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Great story.
Thanks. And Matt, it's so great to see you on here. And I look forward to seeing you and Amy later on.
I'll see you at the tennis court.
Exactly. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Come on.